Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. We are back with another edition of Beyond the Soundbite, where we talk about all things U.S. immigration. I am Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, and you all know I like to dive right on in. So, the first thing we're going to talk about this morning is the Visa Bulletin. The Visa Bulletin for August is released, it's up on the Department of State website. And the Visa Bulletin, as you all may know, and for those of you that don't know, the Visa Bulletin essentially tells us where you are in line when applying for a green card. We get a new Visa Bulletin every month. It gives us a chart with some dates in it, and those dates tell us which applications, which green card applications the Department of State through the consulates as well as USCIS, which applications they are processing based on filing date. So we get this chart every month, and for August, we were expecting a little bit of retrogression, especially in the employment-based EB3 category. So we did not see any retrogression, but they did attach a note with respect to EB3s that I wanted you all to know about. And that note says, although retrogression has not been necessary for August, it will likely be necessary to either retrogress the final action date or make the category, quote, unavailable, end quote, in September. The situation will be continually monitored and any necessary adjustments will be made accordingly. So what that essentially means is they did not move the dates backward this month for August, but for September, they will likely move those dates backwards for EB3. And when they move them backwards, it means essentially backlog. It means it's going to take longer for them to process applications. But now when the dates are unavailable, that's huge, and not in a good way. It is huge because it means that they will not accept any new applications that month. So if it stays unavailable for too long, then we are looking at individuals where we will need to figure out how to keep them work authorized. We'll need to closely monitor when we can file their green card application and monitor that whole process. So what we don't want to see certainly is retrogression, although they are still taking applications when when dates move backwards, but unavailable means that they are not accepting new applications at all that month. So we absolutely do not want to see unavailable. But I wanted you all to know that Department of State is saying that in fact may happen next month. In September. So backlogs will potentially get worse in September. We will see. We will definitely keep you up to date on that. But before we get to, midway through August and into September, sort of taking this wait and see approach, what we're doing at my firm is we are looking to see if we're looking for a plan B, essentially, for our EB3 cases. So we're looking to see if folks have built up their resume. Maybe they qualify for an EB1, extraordinary ability, or maybe they qualify for an EB2, national interest waiver. We're looking at all the things that we can look at to see how we can speed up the green card process for folks. If that's something you would like us to do for you, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to do that. But I did want to let you know that that note was in the August Visa Bulletin. So we are likely looking at retrogression or unavailability for some of these EB3 categories in September. So just keep that in mind. The next thing I want to talk about this morning is the upcoming election. And so I've been getting calls about, can I vote? Should I vote? What should I do? And these calls are coming from folks that are not U.S. citizens. So let me be clear. Voting in any U.S. election, if you are not a U.S. citizen, is not allowed. There are some states that will allow you to vote in local elections. I counsel my clients, unless and until you are a United States citizen, you should not vote. period, in the United States. If you are here without documentation, if you are here undocumented, you should not vote. If you are here in a temporary non-immigrant status, such as an H-1B or an L-1 or an O-1, you should not vote. If you are here as a lawful permanent resident, meaning you have a green card, you should not vote. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. If you have applied for U.S. citizenship and your application has been approved, but you have not taken the oath of citizenship, you should not vote. You should not vote until you are a U.S. citizen. You become a U.S. citizen when you have taken the oath of citizenship. So please keep that in mind. The other thing where it gets a little tricky for some people is when you apply for a driver's license, which you do not have to be a U.S. citizen to apply for a driver's license. But when you apply for a driver's license, many states ask you on the application, would you like to register to vote? Check no if you are not a U.S. citizen. Please, please, please ignore the well-meaning clerk who says, are you sure? You can just do it all at once. It's just easy. Check yes. If you know that you are not a U.S. citizen, please ignore the well-meaning clerk. I'm not saying be rude, but just ignore them and say, no, thank you. I do not wish to register to vote. If you check yes, and then later on you are registered to vote, and then later on you want to apply for U.S. citizenship, you can be denied because by checking yes and registering to vote, the Immigration Service will later say that you claimed to be a U.S. citizen when you were not one. So, do not vote if you are not a U.S. citizen. If you are in the process of becoming a U.S. citizen, you cannot vote until you have taken that oath and you are completely done with the naturalization process. And please ignore the well-meaning clerks in the Department of Motor Vehicles offices that ask, well, are you sure? You can just do it all at once. Please ignore them. Simply say no, thank you, and make sure that box is checked no. You do not want to have a false claim of U.S. citizenship when you later decide that you want to apply for citizenship. So I know there's a lot of talk right now around voting, but remember, if you are not a U.S. citizen, you cannot vote in a U.S. election. So the next thing I want to talk about, and we've talked about a little bit before, is a new program that the current White House administration has come out with regarding individuals that are married to U.S. citizens that are here without status, that initially entered the country without status. They have set aside a new process, a new program for parole in place for these individuals that will help them get their green card without having to leave the U.S. So in order to be eligible for this new process, and it is discretionary, so it is not a slam dunk for anyone. It is absolutely discretionary. You must have entered the U.S. without status. So without admission, without parole, you must have come in without status. You must have been continuously living in the U.S. beginning June 17th of 2014. So that's 10 years as of the date this was released to us. You must be legally married to a U.S. citizen as of June 17th, 2024. So I get this question a lot, and this kind of trips people up. When we're talking about a valid marriage, that means a valid marriage in the States. So if you have a spouse outside of the United States that you never fully divorced, or that you never divorced at all, that you are still married to, and then you enter the U.S. and married a U.S. citizen, you are not in a legally valid marriage to that U.S. citizen, according to U.S. law, because you have a spouse outside the U.S. So make sure that your marriage is valid. That comes up more often than I think people think it would. You must not have any disqualifying criminal history. or be a threat to national security or public safety. So if you do have any sort of criminal history, you want to make sure that you speak with an immigration attorney who can look at that criminal history and see if it will kind of knock you out of these criteria for this parole in place program. And the US government needs to exercise discretion. So if all those things are great, then we can certainly file, we can get you on that path. The Immigration Service has said that they will start accepting applications on August 19th. So that's sort of the new skinny on that. They have recently come out with a list of documents. Now, if you recall, if you're watching me on Monday mornings, I came out with my own list of documents, but that's cool. We will look at the list of documents that they have come out with as well. There's quite a bit of overlap. So they have said that they will, that we can start gathering rent receipts, utility bills, school records for children or adults who are still in school, hospital medical records, records or letters or official documentation from your religious organizations that you've participated in a religious ceremony, religious ceremony that is customary to your religion, money orders or receipts for money sent into or out of the United States, birth certificates for any children born in the United States, dated bank transactions. So if you've got your old bank statements, if you can go online and pull those down. If you have since switched banks, now is the time to reach out to your former banks and try to get those documents. And if you're like me, you may or may not have a pile of old bank statements. Now is the time to start going through them. Automobile license receipts, titles, registrations, deeds and mortgages to homes or condos, rental agreement contracts if you are renting your home, any insurance policies that you have. So do you have an auto policy? Do you have a wind policy? If you're in the state of Florida, you have a wind policy for hurricanes that come through. Do you have a flood policy if you live in a flood zone? So think a little bit outside the box. Anything that puts you living in the US for that 10-year span of time. And also your tax returns or tax receipts or tax payments, state and federal, depending on what state you live in. So that's part of the list that came from the government directly. So think about those things again. That's an application that they say that they're going to begin accepting on August 19th. But we can't just file, we have to have documentation. You guys know, if you listen to me, I'm all about good documentation. So now is the time to start gathering that documentation. And the last thing I want to talk about this morning is the National Visa Center. If you are outside of the US and you are applying for your green card, you want to make sure that you are keeping in touch with the National Visa Center at least once a year. So quite literally once every 364 days, not 365, 364 at a minimum, at least once. If not, they will start the process to close your case. And so this is honestly buried in the fine print of one of the many letters that you got from them or one of the many emails. So you're so excited that you have finally gotten to the point where they're reaching out to you. A lot of people don't read this. And I, again, have seen people get tripped up by this. So you don't want them to close your case. If they close your case, sometimes you can get it reopened by paying the filing fees again, which frankly nobody wants to do. And let me be clear, it does not matter that the backlog is not your fault. So if your case is backlogged and it's looking like it's going to take 2 years to get you through NVC, NVC still needs to hear from you once every 364 days. So what does that mean? You can call the NVC, you can log into your SEAC account. All those two things count as touches to and communicating with the NVC. So it is when you don't call them, you don't email them through the website, and you don't log into SEAC, that they then go through and they're like, oh, look, this person hasn't reached out in 365 days. We're going to start the process to close their case. Sometimes you'll get a notice, but you want to make sure that you are, in fact, keeping in touch with the National Visa Center. You don't want to get to the National Visa Center and then all of a sudden your case is closed and you are having to start all over again. That is no fun. So that's all I have for this Monday morning. If you have any questions about, what should your plan B look like if you are an AB3 or an AB2 green card applicant, if you are looking to apply for U.S. citizenship, if you're looking to hire someone that's not a U.S. citizen and you're just not quite sure where to begin, or you're looking to sponsor a family member for a green card, feel free to reach out to the firm. We are more than happy to help with any of that. And again, I am Carol Williams with Williams Immigration. This has been another Monday morning edition of Beyond the Soundbite. Have a wonderful Monday and a great rest of your week.